Jorge Masvidal is an interesting guy. He's not your typical athlete who grew up playing sports. He's not your typical fighter either. Where most guys grew up wrestling and competing in NCAA wrestling, Jorge grew up fighting on the streets and in backyards. He's certainly your prototypical hood rat kid. Listen to Chael Sonnen break down a tremendous Jorge Masvidal story.
Event. So, at any rate, Bisping and I spend the week together, and somehow he tells me the story of his beef with Jorge Masvidal. And I remember that. I didn't know all the details, but I remember when things were boiling over between those two. They had two altercations that were even caught on camera. I remember like a hotel lobby at the elevators, and they had to be separate. I mean, it got pretty bad. There was another time, and this is just the things where cameras happen to be around. So I knew about it, but he tells me how it began and where this whole thing came from. But then he tells me how it ended. And the way it ended is Bisping is walking down a hallway. I picture like a backstage, like an arena, but he's walking down a hallway and he has four buddies with him and they're all like his size. So four big guys plus five big guys. And there's a guy coming towards them from the other way. Well, it turned out, and I say a guy because it was Jorge Masvidal, but Jorge Masvidal was underneath a hat, like a stocking cap. So Bisping didn't recognize him. So as they were coming up to George like stood on the wall so they could all walk past. So they all walked past. Well, George thought if the roles were reversed, me and my buddies would have jumped Bisping. So George thought that he was going to get jumped when he saw these five guys coming at him. And because they didn't jump him, George was no longer mad at Bisping. So, I mean, this is much more a commentary on Masvidal than it is on Bisping. He's letting you into his mindset. And in his gangster mindset, the fact that they gave him a pass when he may not have given it the other way meant they were square. So Bisping finds out that Masvidal appreciated this gesture. At the time Bisping finds out, this is when he even finds out that that person in the stocking cap was Masvidal. But either way, Bisping's on board. He's like, you know what? This is great. Because I never wanted this weird thing with Masvidal anyway. I actually respect Masvidal. And now I can even like Masvidal because we're good. So when he and Masvidal have made up and now they're hanging out socially, George tells Bisping a story. And George was at a club and he was wearing a chain, gold chain, necklace. I think he had like a nice watch on or something. But these two guys walk up to him that George doesn't know. And one of them like flicks the necklace, like reaches down and flicks it. So George doesn't know how to interpret that, but thinks that these guys are going to rob him. So George knocks the one guy out that touched the necklace and turns with a hook and knocks out the other guy. Now, if you ever hear a story about, I was at a club and I knocked two guys out with two punches, you've now met a liar. Except if that guy's Jorge Masvidal. So George knocks these two guys out and decides he's got to lay low while this scene is like unfolding. So he ducks into the bathroom. So when George goes into a bathroom, a guy comes in the bathroom right behind him. So in George's mind, he's like, well, I don't know if this guy that just came in the bathroom is with those two other guys. So George knocks that guy out. So the question becomes, George, why'd you knock the guy out in the bathroom? What if he wasn't with them? What if he had nothing to do with it at all? He was a patron and went to use the restroom. George said, I couldn't take the risk. That was the answer. I could not take the risk. So I go, okay, wait a second. And I think about this story all day. All day, I'm thinking about the guy that walked in the bathroom that may have had nothing, likely has nothing to do with this at all. I guess he gets KO'd in the bathroom. I don't mean to laugh, but there's something about this imagery. I'm going, man. So I call Bisping and I go, hey man, that story you told me about Masvidal, can I tell that story? Can I go to my podcast and YouTube and can I tell that story? And he goes, I don't know. He goes, it's okay that I told it to you, but I don't know if you should make that public. Ask Masvidal. So, okay. So I call Masvidal. Go, hey, Bisping told me a story about you in a club where these guys messed with your necklace and a third guy came into the bathroom. I got the whole, can I put that story out? Masvidal's, yeah, man, cool. That's all he says to me over the phone. Yeah, man, cool. He hangs up the phone. Okay. So that's the story. I think that it's very interesting, but I also think it lets you into the mind of Jorge Masvidal. I mean, look, this guy's as real as it gets. They can call him the BMF, Or they could call him what Errol Hawani calls him, which is the RMS, the realest MF in the business. And this guy's got a code, and he lives by his code. And I would suggest if you're going to get into Masvidal's wheelhouse, you might want to learn what that code is so you don't overstep.
And there you have it, folks. Paranoia is prevalent in plenty of street guys similar to Jorge Masvidal. For those guys, it was wrong place, wrong time. For Jorge, it was just another day in the life. Thank you guys for watching. Please leave a like and comment on the video. It boosts the algorithm.